And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tingsboro TV Live. I am Town Media Director Steve Brogan, and I am continuing the series of candidate interviews that we've been doing for the last few weeks now. I had interviewed our state rep candidates, Colleen Gary, Sabrina Heisey, and Ray Lazinski, as well as the Register of Deed candidates, Karen Casella and Richard Howe. And I had said that I wasn't going to do any more candidate interviews because there's so many, at least before the primary, because there's so many people for Congress. There's tons for Congress, and then quite a few for Senator as well. Not quite as much, but because of timing and a number of other things, I wasn't going to chase them down. That said, I did put it out there that candidates are more than welcome to send me a message if they'd like to be on, and that we would do a interview with them if they so chose. So a few have reached out, so I'll have a couple of them coming up this week. 2 today and then 1 on Friday. I've got for State Senate, Rodney Elliott has joined us this afternoon. We're going to chat a bit about his candidacy, as well as later today we'll have Ed Kennedy, who's also running for Senate. And then Friday I've got Bij Das coming in, who's running for Congress in this district, trying to fill Nikki Songus' seat. So there's quite a bit going on. There's a ton of people running. There is a number of interviews that we just received from the town of Concord that have interviewed all of the congressional candidates. So if you want to see that, we'll have that on our channel here in town, and at Verizon Channel 29, Comcast Channel 8. And then, like I said, I'll have these interviews up on Facebook and YouTube as well, so you can check them out there. Before I forget to mention, if you are watching our program, you can check us out on Facebook through the various town pages that we share this to, as well as at tingsboroma.gov and on Verizon Channel 29 and Comcast Channel 8. And newly just added is now we're also streaming on YouTube, so you can watch us there as well, which is pretty awesome because YouTube has a really, really good reach that places like Facebook and TV just don't reach to. So it's really kind of cool that we're able to get those there. So all of the programs that we do from here on out will also be streaming on YouTube. And of course, you can watch them later on after they have been completed. So with all that said, as I mentioned, my guest this afternoon is Rodney Elliott. He is going to discuss his candidacy, and you are running for it's the first Middlesex district, excuse me, which was former State Senator Eileen Donahue, who is now city manager in Lowell. So she left the position, which left quite a gaping hole, which apparently a lot of people want to go for. It's a very good, very interesting seat, very important seat too as well. She did quite a bit for a number of years. I don't remember the exact number of years she was on, but it was quite a long time. So without further ado, let's chat with Rodney and we can talk about his candidacy. So first question I have for you, Rodney, is basically just tell us about yourself and why you decided to run for State Senate.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Thank you for having me. And thanks to the residents of Tingsboro for tuning in. So my name's Rodney Elliott. I have been a Lowell City Councilor and former mayor. I've been a city councilor for 21 years, my 21st year. Mm-hmm. I served a term as mayor just a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And, so during my tenure on the city council, I've been a fiscal conservative.
Mm-hmm. You were always a fiscal watchdog. I remember that.
Fiscal watchdog. And I think that's important. I think it's important to have that foundation. That's my background. I have a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees in public administration. And I've spent the last 36 years of my professional career, if you will, working in a variety of levels of government, including on the local level, city planner. I was the administrative assistant for the Board of Selectmen in Groton, which happens to be in the district. I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency for almost 25 years.
And you're still there, right?
I left the Environmental Protection Agency a number of years ago.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I spent a couple of years at DEP doing brownfields redevelopment, and just about 8 months ago, I took a job as a capital budget director for the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So I clearly am concerned and very involved for the last 30-odd years with protecting the environment. But also, interestingly enough, when I first got out of college, I started my career at the Massachusetts State Senate. I was a legislative assistant for then State Senator Philip Shea, right in the very district that I'm running for. Okay. So, people... I can speak to this at the close, but people say, why are you running? Certainly my service as a city councilor, working on constituent services and finances. But, it doesn't end there. There are so many issues that we tackle as city councilor, because we run at large. So whether you adjust things from potholes to healthcare. So it's a very wide array of issues that we address, and I have led the effort on many of those issues, including as the mayor we established the first opiate epidemic task force, which continues to meet, which produces results, knowing that there's still a growing trend of fatal overdoses and fatalities. So that's a little bit about myself. I'm married, was born in Lowell. I raised my family in Lowell, right in Pawtuckaville, where I was raised. I have 2 daughters. I have 3 granddaughters. I have 5 sisters, and my mom. So it's I've been blessed with women in my life, and I think it's great. I've been very involved with my community, whether it's running the soccer organization for almost 24 years, or still serving on board community boards, Boys and Girls Club, or community teamwork, serving on hospital boards, and so many other nonprofit organizations, the Disability Commission, and I think it's very important to be involved in the community. Even beforehand, I was a neighborhood leader in Pawtuckaville. That's sort of how I got my start. So with that, I feel based upon a lot of variables, a lot of my background, my experience, my education, I'm most qualified, most suited to do that job.
Okay, excellent. You talked about the opioid crisis a little bit. I remember when you became mayor, I want to say it was about that time when it really started to explode, that whole problem. Would you say that that's one of your main focuses, or would be one of your main focuses as a state senator, or I'm sure you have a number of others, but...
Yeah, there are a lot of challenging issues facing the state at this point. And I can tell you just from the local perspective, I started campaigning for this job back in February, and there hasn't been a day that has gone by that I haven't campaigned. I've crisscrossed this district every single day. And the importance of that is, I've been to Board of Selectmen meetings and school committee meetings, town meetings, and why? Because you have to get involved in the community. I certainly know the city of Lowell, every neighborhood, but it was important to get the perspective of what the issues are in the town. And this opioid crisis, it has no limits, no boundaries, no demographic lines. So I do think it's important. I think we've made great strides. As I mentioned, we established a task force back in 2014 that continues to meet today of all the stakeholders involved to try to get our arms around this massive, it's a massive problem.
It really is.
Finally, the federal government, I shouldn't say finally, the federal government has stepped in. But we lose 72,000 people a year across this nation to opioid fatality. So it's significant. I believe that we in the city have been leaders in efforts, I think, to address this. Whether it's recovery coaches or the Megan's House, one of the first nonprofit organizations to raise money privately for treatment. It's
an excellent organization too, Megan's House.
It is, and I believe that many other communities, maybe many other organizations have followed suit. So I was proud to lead that effort. And it was a growing, an escalating problem, as you mentioned, a number of years ago. And I like to say it was important or intricate in stemming the tide somewhat. There's still lots of work to do. And I think the state needs to get involved. I know the governor did increase the number of beds, increase funding for recovery coaches, because what we did see is many people were going into treatment for 30 days. They were coming back to the same environment with little to no support. And that is, to me, one of the key aspects of once people are sober, to maintain that they should, and to reduce the recidivism. So, that and drug enforcement is clearly, it's a multifaceted approach that has to take place. So it's complex. I understand it. I have been a leader on it. I think it's one of the driving issues that we will face in the next year or two to combat this problem.
Do you feel that there is something that politicians can do to stem opioids, or do you think it's beyond that? Do you think it's grown beyond that?
I think, as we have seen many issues where in the city, it's a partnership. It's as I mentioned, stakeholders. What are stakeholders? It's a term to get the police, the fire. The district attorney has a task force as well. So it's getting the players around the table is probably a better word. Those that have an impact, those that are on the streets and working with the community, including organizations like UTEC, getting involved, getting awareness, expanding awareness in our schools at a young age. Things like just educating our high school students that may get injured at any point, whether it's from sports or otherwise, that the dangers of it. Right. I think that's, and the second thing, I led the effort for the city of Lowell to sue the big pharmaceutical companies, who I clearly feel are not only culpable but responsible for this epidemic that started, well over a decade ago. So those are the types of things that I have led on. I think that's the leadership that I can bring to the state senate to take on big issues such as that. So I do think that elected officials have and need to continue to play a role, certainly for funding aspects, but also to heighten awareness. I believe it's a federal problem, quite frankly, and that's where big resources are, and that's what we need. So I hope the outcome for our lawsuit, joining other communities against Big Pharma, produces the similar results that the tobacco lawsuits did. That these big companies, they caused the problem, they pushed the opiates, and they should be responsible for the cost that we as a city and as a state are absorbing.
At the very least, they should share in some of the burden in trying to right the ship a bit. It seems like
perfect.
Let's broaden this out just a little bit. So we talked about sort of one issue. What are the three big issues that you see facing you as a state senator if you were to get elected, as well as the state in general? Issues that you would try to tackle immediately.
Yeah, sure. I believe the healthcare is clearly one issue. The opiate, regrettably, we've seen an increase in fatalities and overdoses. So sometimes it's as a result of the fentanyl and now the carfentanil that's being pushed, why we see an increase. But nevertheless, it's still a growing problem. But the healthcare is consuming almost 40%, or at least 40% of our budget healthcare costs. That means there's less money available for education and our roads and our bridges, and I believe that that is a significant. It's about $16 billion. So I think it's policies that need to be stressed. I also think that we need to bring more transparency and competition to the drug providers. When you look at a simple example of an EpiPen costing, $100 to produce.
The price had skyrocketed,
and they're
recently.
Charging $600. I think those are the things that we need to bring more competition to the prescription drug market, and as well as transparency. Why is this kind of a closed book type of operation? Secondly, I think, the school funding, as I have, traveled through this district every single day, school funding is a significant issue, and there was a foundation review commission, that produced a report that said it is, in fact, underfunded, and I believe the state has to step up. Of course, the question is, where's the money coming from? I don't believe that, just raising taxes is the answer. In fact, I don't think that's the answer. I believe that we need to look at that $41 billion state budget, establish our priorities, just as we have on the city council. And I'm proud to say that I have been a steward and I've led the finance subcommittee chair for 21 years. That took, when I got on, we had significant structural deficits. Taxes were going up. So you have to make those decisions, prioritize. We have one of the strongest bond ratings in the state. And we also have very strong stabilization reserves. So we have had to make cuts. We have had to make decisions to be able to deliver the services, public safety and education at the same time, make sure people can afford it. So I believe that those same principles that I have had on the city council, I will take that to the state senate. And I do believe that we have to increase our funding for communities like Tyngsboro, like Lowell, like other surrounding communities that struggle when it comes to education and provide good quality education. And that the findings from that Foundation Review Commission are significant, and it needs to be taken up in the Senate and in the House to provide additional funding to communities.
Interesting. Yeah. Just quickly, I just want to mention, so if you happen to be watching on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to chime in if you have questions you'd like to ask of candidate Rodney Elliott. You're welcome to, and I'm actually watching the comment section. So if you have one, just throw it up there, and as soon as I see it, I'll throw it out to Rodney and let him answer the question. So I have a sort of a follow-up. Do you think that the government our state government spends too much money in any particular areas that they could divert some back to, say, education or healthcare or the opiate issue?
Well, I think that when you look at technology and streamlining government, which clearly we have done in the city of Lowell, I think it's important. I do think there are areas of, even if you just look at the welfare, if you look at healthcare, the healthcare costs, $16 billion. You look at reports, various audits, anywhere from $27 to $30 million of waste, abuse, and fraud. I think that's an area that we need to put under the microscope. What is working? Why is there this waste? Why is there this abuse? And I think it's important to do that.
Okay.
I think that's one area. But I think there's there are opportunities for regionalizing, whether it's things like the registry of deeds. There's 13 registry of deeds in this day and age. Can technology doesn't technology replace a lot of those locations? So I think there's opportunity for to look at and streamline just like we have on the local government.
So you're looking for efficiencies, basically.
Efficiencies, without a doubt. I think the governor has done that. I think he has reduced the workforce. I think that's important because in large part, at least on the local side, 80% is salaries and things like that. So, those are the things that I would look at. Again, healthcare those are policy issues that we need to look at. How can we deliver the services? We need to go to value-based bundle payments that will reduce your administrative costs, still provide better care, accountable care organizations. And at the same time, we have some hospitals that are making millions and millions of dollars. And while we have community hospitals that are running deficits, those community hospitals are vital. And so it's a complex problem. I feel I understand the issue and how to present solutions to it best. And I think that'll be one of the major issues. So school funding, the opioid crisis, certainly the healthcare costs. I think those are major issues on the local level.
Yep.
I believe that we need a permanent Rourke Bridge. I think it has an economic impact. It does have an impact on the city of Lowell, but also Tingsboro, because traffic will migrate to the path of least resistance, as we all know. And I feel before it's too late, and it's getting too late, because if a bridge goes down, certainly it affects the entire region. And I think that is significant. So that's...
So let me ask you this then. What are the obstacles to preventing? Because, I see that affecting not just Lowell and Tingsboro, but Drake also. That whole area, really, this whole region, because the traffic. People are trying to get to Tingsboro. People are trying to get to Drake. People are trying to leave those places and get to their jobs. My wife and I, I'll tell you from personal experience, my wife and I lived in Pawtuckaville for the last 10 years and moved out of there because the traffic was so ridiculous. It would take her more than an hour to get to Westford, and the majority of that time was spent trying to cross the bridge. So what are some of the big obstacles in trying to get something like that, a major project like a new Rourke Bridge, done? Sure.
Like many organizations, let's say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I believe our legislature has got funding certainly to keep the bridge in repair. But I think you have to form coalitions. I think you have to work with the governor, who I supported when I ran. When I was the mayor, and I think he has delivered for the city. He's delivered for the region. I have a very good working relationship with him. I have all expectations that he's going to win, and I believe that'll be significant to be able to work with the governor. Say this is the priority. It's a regional issue, as you've mentioned, and the bridge is 33 years old, and it was slated to be a temporary bridge, and it does have an impact on the region. So it's access, and it's working with legislators, working with the administration to make that a priority. And it happens around the state, and I think we just need to galvanize support to make that happen.
You just need enough people pushing in one direction, basically, to get that done. It seems like.
I agree.
Yeah. So. Speaking of the governor, are there any areas with the governor? Now, you said you supported him, obviously. What are some of the areas that you maybe strongly agree with the governor? Some issues that he's done recently that you agree with?
Well, I can tell you on the local level, when he was running and I met with him, he made commitments to the city of Lowell to put the Judicial Center on fast track and make it happen.
Okay.
That had languished for many, many years.
That did. You're right. Yeah.
And that's a significant development, a significant economic. Have a significant economic impact to the city. I believe he has done a a very good job in handling the finances. He inherited a huge multi-million-dollar deficit. He has continued to promote economic development throughout the state while keeping taxes. He took the no new tax pledge, and I believe that he has done. I think he's handled many issues. The opioid crisis he has made a priority. He's invested in our infrastructure. He's addressing climate. And sea level inundation. So I think across the board he has listened to the people. He has listened to the constituents. That's what I have done for 21 years. I think that's important, and to bring that message to the State House to achieve progress. So housing, I know there are some significant issues that still affect us as a state. Housing, transportation. I would say transportation needs to be a priority. I know
roads and bridges, or are you talking about like trains and other things? I
think it's a variety, Steve. I believe that it's it's the MBTA that I take almost every day, and when you're on the roadways, a complaint that I do hear: our roads need to be paved, our bridges need to be safe, and we need sidewalks. And those are basic issues. On the other hand, the governor has, as soon as he took office, he released $200 million in Chapter 90 money to communities like Lowell and Tingsboro that we can make, that we stretch, it goes a long way. So I see there have been improvements, but I think transportation and how do you release gridlock that. Almost anywhere you go throughout the Commonwealth. The good news is that people are back to work. Jobs have been, the economy is expanding. Jobs are being created. There's a lot of interest in people coming to do business and work, create jobs in Massachusetts, and I think that's significant.
Yeah, it seems like, honestly, the political climate in Lowell has really tried to help. I mean, not that it shouldn't be helping, but has really helped in a lot of ways bring back a lot of that stuff. So that's promising to see.
I think economic development is also significant. We don't want to lose sight of the importance of it. And the economy is going well, which makes sense. But at a time where things are going well, the governor has created increased the stabilization to almost $2 billion. So when it does slow down, that services aren't decimated, and we continue to provide, the state government continues to operate. So it's that balance, not raising any more taxes. I do believe that, the sales holiday that finally came, a sales tax holiday that finally came about, I think that's important. I think people can look forward to that and reducing that sales tax for communities like Lowell and Tingsboro. They're on that border. So, I don't really know where the governor stands on that, to be honest with you, but I think that's a priority.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you? So I asked you what things you agree with him on. Are there any things that you disagree with the governor on? Any issues that you can think of?
There was one issue. I think it was called. I don't think it's called patent trolling, where when someone has a patent, they're not allowed to just take that somewhere else.
Okay.
I don't believe the governor he didn't support that, and I thought that was important for organizations that we have in Lowell, the M2D2, the medical the medical device development, where you have somebody that creates an invention or a product, and they should be required to not be able to go and just sell it off somewhere.
So you're talking about intellectual property, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Other issues with the governor, the 72-hour holding period. I think it's important to have there is a study, I believe, that was proposed. I do support that. 72 hours. I need to get a little bit more information on that. He proposed 72. I do think, because what we do see in the city of Lowell is someone will overdose. They will rush them to the hospital. They will revive them, and then they're released. And they go right back into the population. And more often than not, sometimes we'll have overdoses of the same individual, 1, 2, and sometimes even 3 times. It's very unfortunate, the product that is being used, Narcan, to save lives. We now see in the city of Lowell that the addicts are carrying it with them. So they know that if they do overdose, because it's made available without a prescription, which I agree. Yep. But unfortunately, there's always a flip side to this, and it's frustrating. So maybe there's a happy medium between 72 hours and maybe, and I think the importance of that, a significance, is to have them detox somewhat and then provide them with a path to treatment. And that is the key for those that are addicted. And the other path is prevention. So I think that's imperative. I think we've made progress. This is a decade-old problem, and even then some, that it's raising its ugly head now because people get addicted and then they go to drugs that they, there was a prescription monitoring program now. I think it has been very database is what it is, that doctors go and check before they issue.
Okay.
Which prevents people going from one doctor to the next. It's been the number of prescriptions have dropped significantly. I want to say around 50%. But so I know that I'm confident we're going to get there. It's still a long road. But it's we're back to the opioid program again. But
right.
So I think there's some compromise there.
Okay.
So
where do you stand on gun control issues in the state? I know we had recently Maura Healey. She made her own determination on the Massachusetts assault weapons ban. So that's one piece of it, but also with just a lot of the other gun control initiatives that have been put forth, and then some of them have been passed, obviously. Where do you stand just kind of in general on gun control in the state?
Well, I could tell you in the city of Lowell, there's a major, major problem with illegal guns. And we have led efforts, including one that I put forth for the city council, to do a gun buyback, which, as I have learned, it's good to get guns off the streets. Unfortunately, those aren't the guns that typically that we want. They're in the hands
right.
of...
You're not getting the gang members.
We're not getting the gang members. Exactly. So I think we have, gun laws that are in place. I know that we went through a new permitting process in the city that was somewhat contentious, but it is rigorous. And I think, people going through the legal process to get their guns, and they go through the background and those tests, that's the way to go.
Now, how would you propose, though, getting the guns out of the gang members' hands as opposed to more legislation that would take that away from illegal gun owners? Yeah,
that is a frustrating aspect, I can tell you, in this on the city. We go through, as you mentioned, we go through the process, and getting those guns, those illegal guns, where they come from, it comes from out of state, where they, the background checks and the ability to buy guns is less restrictive, if you will. And we have found, whether it's New York or even, neighbors here in New Hampshire, that's where most of the guns that are confiscated when people are arrested, that's where they can trace them back to. So that's a struggle. How do we do that as a state? I don't have the answer to that. It's it's a national. There has to be a national gun policy, and at the state level, we wouldn't be able to do that. But I believe that we do have strict gun laws, and I understand because of the impact. And I mean, you can look at any given day on, unfortunately, news reports in the city, and the shootings are all they're all illegal guns.
Right.
So you can't penalize legal gun owners for those actions of those that have illegal guns.
Okay. So sort of as part of that, we've had this issue lately that's been sort of rearing its head with some judges who have been, let's say, overly lenient on dangerous criminals, basically dangerous guys who ended up going out and unfortunately killing some of our law enforcement officers. Granted, they'd probably kill anybody who was in front of them, but the law enforcement guys got to them first. How would you propose sort of limiting these judges, or maybe reining them in, or I don't know, just addressing the issue overall of a judge being way too lenient and maybe letting somebody who's dangerous out, and then that person then goes and kills somebody? Sure.
First, I don't believe that we should be electing judges. I want to make that very clear. I don't believe that we need to integrate a political process into getting good judicial review. But secondly, I believe that everyone should go through a review process. Judges are appointed for life. I understand the reasoning behind it. However, appointed for life doesn't mean that there should not be a judicial review of performance. And I think all of us need to be held accountable. I think that needs to be part of, and I would advocate that at the state level, that there should be a review process, a performance process, whether it's every 5 years. I think 5 years is a good time to evaluate. We are all evaluated in our jobs everywhere you go.
Everybody,
including elected officials. That if you're doing a good job, people will give you a grade.
Right, you get reelected.
We'll get reelected,
or not.
Yeah. And I think that's important. So I do think it's imperative that it sets a standard that we all have to that judges have to abide by. And there are many, many good judges out there. But the issue is to ensure that percentage that may not be performing as expected, be held accountable.
Okay. I have one last question for you. Do you think that Massachusetts should be a sanctuary state?
I do not believe so. I believe, for instance, the city of Lowell, we took up this issue, maybe it was a little over a year ago, and we have a policy, we have an ordinance that police officers will not ask the immigration status of that may not be related to a criminal investigation. I believe that we have great trust with our elected officials, our neighborhood organizations, and including myself as an elected official. When there is a problem, and I can tell you, more than once, I get phone calls from all populations across, from the African community, the Colombian community, the Cambodian community, and there is that trust, there is that relationship. I feel our police officers have that. We diversify our police force, our workforce, and there are very good relationships between the various nationalities and populations in the city. So I believe you can have a law in the books that says you have to do this, or you can do it. And we walk the walk in the city. I feel very comfortable saying that. Secondly, I don't want Lowell or Tingsboro or Dunstable or Grunt. I don't want those to be locations where criminals feel they can come and be protected.
Right. Get inundated. Yeah, they inundate the areas, and
I don't feel, and that would send a message, in my humble opinion, that we don't need that. We are going to create trust. We have trust with our immigrant population. Lowell is a city, always has been, always will be, of immigrants. And when there are problems, then we will prosecute, and we don't need any law to prohibit that, in my opinion.
Excellent. Okay. Well, very, very interesting answers. I hope that everybody watching got some good information out of this. Before we wrap up, I want to give you just a couple minutes. You can chat about again about why you're who you are, why you're running, and I also want to mention to folks, if you are watching and you want to get some more information, I'm going to bring up Rodney's website here real quick so you can take a look at it. You can visit voterodneyelliott.com, and you can check out his website and see what he's all about on the issues and various news, and sign up to help and all that fun stuff too. So before we wrap up, like I said, I want to let you have an opportunity again just to state who you are and why you're running for candidate and why you feel people should vote for you.
Well, thank you again, Steve, for allowing me this time
to
talk to the viewers and participate with Tingsboro Cable Television. So my name's Rodney Elliott. As I mentioned, I'm a candidate for the state senate that includes Lowell, Tingsboro, Dunstable, Groton, Pepperell, Westford. And for the last 6 months since February, I made the decision to run for office. I have been in every town, every city, every day of the week. It's important to me. Look, I'm a tireless worker. I've been a dedicated public servant on the city council for 21 years. I've served a term as the mayor. I have taken up issues, a broad spectrum of issues, from elderly to veterans issues to school funding, always keeping the taxpayer in mind. I think that's important. That's what we're going to bring to the state senate. There are many issues that I will go to work on. We talked about a few of them: healthcare, school funding, but also I've heard from you across the district relative to keeping us schools safe, to holding utility companies accountable when powers are lost. We shouldn't be left in the dark for 5 days without any reimbursement or accountability, and I think that's significant. So I know the issues from the ground level. I will work tirelessly. I'm going to be a full-time state senator. Some opponents are going to continue to run a law firm. They're going to hold a second public office. I'm going to be a full-time senator. It's a full-time salary. It's a full-time job representing 150,000 people across this district. It requires being at the State House, and it requires being in your town on a regular basis. One thing I have heard, towns sometimes feel left out. I will be in your town halls. I'll be in your coffee shops. I'll be in your library. I'll set up. I will have regular office hours to ensure I hear what the issues are, and I'll be your voice, and I will carry those messages to Beacon Hill, to the State House. So I humbly ask for your support on September 4th. My name is Rodney Elliott. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Rodney. I appreciate your time coming in. You contacted me to come on and talk. Again, hope everybody got some good information about candidate Rodney Elliott. And as I mentioned, we'll have a couple other candidates coming up later on this week. One more today, and then later on Friday. Also, as I mentioned, don't forget to, if you want to check out more information on Rodney, go to voterodneyelliott.com. You can check out all the information about him there. Don't forget also to vote on September 4th, because that's where the big primary is going to happen, where the field will be narrowed and we'll be down to just one Democrat, one Republican, and one of the other parties, whatever ones there are. Don't forget September 4th on that. And then also, obviously, November 6th is the big election day where you get to make your final decision. All these videos that we've been filming here, they will be available on Facebook and YouTube and tingsboro.gov on our video on demand service, as well as playing here in town, Tingsboro on Verizon Channel 29 and Comcast Channel 8. If you have any questions for me, feel free to email those in sbrogan@tingsboro.gov, and you can always send me messages via Facebook through private message, or just leave something in the comment section. So with that said, everybody, hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.